I'm dating coach and relationship expert Jennifer Hurwitz, and welcome to Doing Relationships Right. Raw, authentic, and insightful, this podcast is a no bullshit look at all things dating and relationships. The good, the not so good, and the what the hell was that? No worries, I've got you, and we'll figure it all out together without taking ourselves too seriously here on Doing Relationships Right. Here you are at midlife. Your boobs have entered a new zip code. You have jeans older than your daughter's new fiance. And now you're single again. But is that cause for a crisis? Hell no. It's time to pick yourself up, Buttercup. Whether you're freshly unhitched, just dipping your toesies back into the dating pool, or ready to dive into a new relationship, my new book, Midlife Priceless, a dating coach's guide to finally doing relationships right, has you covered with new dating and relationship advice tailored to meet you wherever you are in your relationship journey. Join me, Jennifer Hurwitz, author of best-selling books, One Happy Divorce and Woulda, Coulda, Shoulda, as I share BS-free tips and laugh out loud personal anecdotes to help set you on the path toward finally doing dating and relationships right. Grab your copy of my new book, Midlife Priceless, at jenniferhurwitz.com. That's jenniferhurwitz.com. Good morning. Good morning. This is Doing Relationships Right. I'm Jennifer Hurwitz. I'm your host every week. I'm here bringing you fabulous guests. I'm so excited for this podcast because it is just like a topic that I've never done. And I'm super excited because, oh my gosh, Julia Karol. Did I say that right?
Yeah, you got it.
Julia Karol is here. And let me just tell you guys, get ready for this one. She's a solo mom by choice, right? SMBC. I love it. And she has a podcast called Stork'd. Am I right?
Yeah, you got that right.
I got it right. I'm just going to talk about. So, do you guys ever? I get this so often when people are dating. The dating pool isn't what you want. You know, you're out there. Your biological clock is ticking, and you're like, you know what? I want to have a kid of my own. I just want to do this by myself. Give me the sperm donor. Find me a guy. Let's do this. And you know what? It happens like more than anybody thinks. So, Julia, tell me your story. Where did you start? How did this come to pass? What? Tell me everything. I'm so excited to have you.
Yeah. Okay.
So excited.
Oh my gosh. So it happens so much more than you think because there are three things that have to happen at the same time. Your financial and career life has to be in order. And right now, a lot of us are really engaging in our professional lives and we aren't necessarily planning our fertility around our careers or our careers around our fertility. So that's a really important concept. Then there's dating, and dating is so hard right now. You know, this is your topic.
I feel so
right?
bad for you guys. I feel so bad for everybody. I know. I know. It's hard.
So
it's tough.
hard. And then there's fertility, right? And you know, the general rule of thumb is that as a woman, your fertility starts to decline, which means that your egg quality starts to decline a little bit in your mid 30s to early 40s. But that isn't necessarily true for everyone. So there can be people in their early 20s who are having declining fertility and people who can get pregnant well into their mid 40s. I'm not a doctor, but you know,
like, oops.
So, you know, it's not a hard and fast rule, but it does generally align to that like midlife crisis of what am I going to do with myself? And for me, I can tell you that my journey started with a breakup in my mid 30s. And it was a really hard breakup. I'm sure you've coached people through these. You know, the ones where you're like, I am not okay. I don't know why I'm not okay. Like I thought I was stronger than this. You know those?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Everyone has them.
Everyone has them.
I mean, you have them after divorce. You have them before divorce. Breakups are tough.
Breakups are tough. And it was supremely embarrassing for me that this breakup was so hard because like, I was like, I thought I was stronger than this. I thought I was like, you know.
Don't beat yourself up because you know what? That's not the issue.
It's not the issue.
We can do another podcast on that, but it's not that you're not strong. It's that it just hit you a different way.
It hit different. And I'll tell you one of the reasons it hit different because at the end of the day, the guy wasn't even that special. He was a good guy, but he wasn't my guy. And I've had other breakups before that didn't hit as hard. I've had breakups that hit harder, but this one hit especially hard. And after an enormous amount of self-reflection, I realized it wasn't him. It wasn't losing him, right? It was losing the vision of what I wanted my family to be. The idea. Yeah. And a lot of my girlfriends and I talk about like what you imagine your life can be versus what it actually is. And the reality of, oh my God, I'm mid-30s. My life is not on track. I am not doing the things I intended to do. Hit me like a ton of bricks. And it was especially around family. How the hell am I going to have a family now at 35, right?
Oh, this kills me. Because there's so many, that's why you're here. I mean, like, I think what you're doing is phenomenal because there are ways to have a family you can do it.
That's exactly. And that's what my podcast celebrates. And it's solo parents, it's adoption, it's people who choose not to have kids and say, I don't want kids. And that's great. I want to be the best aunt imaginable. And that's great. People who are in all sorts of interesting polyamorous and multi-dynamic relationships, people who don't want to, you name it, divorce, dating, we cover it all because we all have families, whether we've birthed children or never going to birth children, or whether children are not part of our lives. We all have families. We have relationships with our siblings, our parents, our loved ones. So that's what the podcast is all about. But it's centered around when I picked myself up after this relationship and I dusted myself off, as much as it's nice in hindsight to be like, I dusted myself off. It's a long journey. It's not a lot of dusting.
Yes, but it is a long journey.
I said, okay, I'm going to have a family. How the hell am I going to do this? And I started talking to people. Jennifer, if I knew you at the time, I would have called you and said, let's talk about this. I talked to all of my divorced friends. What's the dating life like when you are dating people who want to be stepmoms, or what is being a stepmom like? I talked to people in adoption. What's adoption like? I went down the path. I even flew to Colombia with my cousin who was visiting her orphanage and talked to the orphanage director there about what is adoption like. I talked to solo mom parents. I talked to people who said, I never get to have kids, and that's something I'm reconciling. I talked to all those people. And that's what became the podcast, because I was on this exploration of what is my path. And what I learned about all those various paths, having those conversations and saying, okay, let's press record on these, they're really special, is that each path is totally valid and totally beautiful and totally special. And just like picking a career or a spouse, the only thing that doesn't work is if you put somebody else's path on and say, this is now my fashion, this is now my style, this is who I am now. You have to find your deep core and say, what is what I really want? What's my values? What's my true north? Where am I headed? And for some people, it's, I just want to parent. And if I am a step parent to somebody I love and kids that I love, that is magical. Or if I parent kids by having foster children in my home regularly and support them through transition periods, that is lovely, right? There are people who say, I want my partner. I want the person that I love and go to bed with every night that we're going to build the rest of our lives with. And if I have to sacrifice having kids for that person, no problem. Maybe you marry somebody or you find somebody who doesn't want kids, or maybe you find them late in life and you've missed your fertility window. So all of those are incredible and valid choices. The hard part is figuring what's the choice that's right for me.
That's right. And because I'll tell you something really funny. In my first book that I wrote, I started it off with the perfect sperm. This is the first chapter, because when I met my husband, I knew, like, okay, great. You know what? I'm looking for the perfect sperm. I'm not so sure I want the perfect husband who really cares. I wanted the sperm. And I even remember like looking at him on our first or second date and saying, I'm going to marry you. Do you mind? Maybe I don't even need to marry you. Maybe I could just have your sperm. And I think he thought I was kidding. And I was kind of serious. I was like, you know what? Maybe I could just do this on my own. But back then, I feel like there was such a stigma. And I thought, like, I'm Jewish, and Jewish, what do? We get married, we have kids. It was all the pressure of it. And I really do feel like maybe I was meant to just have, kids on my own. And I think that's so hard to know. Like, you have to be mature enough and solid in your own self to know that, like, what you want over what is, you know what I'm saying? So I love that.
It's interesting. I'm actually also Jewish, and I found that the Jewish community was so welcoming and supportive of all alternative families.
Okay,
the
great.
Jewish faith was one of the first faiths to welcome gay marriages.
Yeah, of course. Yes.
And so, when I actually called a rabbi and I said, I need to do a naming ceremony because I want my kid to be deeply tied into the traditions of the Jewish faith, because there's no other person in his life, right? And he needs to have a community. He needs to have deep connections to my family. He needs to have deep connections to my faith. And she was like, oh, yeah, of course, obviously.
I just felt the pressure from like, I'm older than you, but like, I felt like the pressure to get married, have kids. I went to Israel. I met my husband in Israel.
Oh my God.
On a singles mission.
That's
my parents like
magical. I should do that.
They sent me there like, go find a man.
Yeah. No, okay. So there definitely is that, the Jewish tradition. And I definitely think, one of the things I talk so much about on the podcast is, and in the resources and materials and stuff that we provide through Stork'd, is separating what the world tells you is important from what is important to you.
Oh, I wish I had.
Right?
That's exactly right.
It's really hard. And so when I talk about reflecting on what's right for you as a person, it starts with, what are the things that I think are important, and are they truly mine to own, or are they given to me? And it's very okay to say, you know what? The world is telling me I need a partner, and I agree. And it's also okay to say the world is telling me I need a partner, and no, thank you. I'm going to do it my way. Same thing with kids. So many people I know who say I've chosen, in fact, it's more controversial to choose not to have kids. Most of the people I talk to who say they have chosen not to have kids say they get pushback and berated and disbelief and you'll change your mind. And it is so infantilizing to have other adults say your decision isn't valid because it's not what is the norm. And I expected that as a single parent. I expected people to say that my choice wasn't valid. Not at all. So yeah, you have to take away what is pressure I'm getting? What is the norm? What the expectation? What is culture telling me? And is that mine? Do I want it? And it's okay to say, yes, I want it. Culture's telling me kids are great and I want kids. Awesome. Culture's telling me I want a partner and I want a partner. Awesome. But it's such an individualized choice. And for me, it came down to, I had to ask myself the really difficult question. If I never, ever, ever meet the person of my dreams, I never get to date that person, I never get to have that person, and I'm alone forever, am I okay with that? And if obviously it's not my preferred path, but if the alternative is I never, ever get to have kids, I was not okay with that. That was my hard and fast.
That's exactly
in the line.
Okay, so
right?
that was it.
So I always think the way to get to your true heart of what you really want is to ask yourself extreme questions. If I never get to parent my own biological children, or I never get to parent, which is more important? And some people say, I really need to be biologically connected to my kids. And some people will say, it's not important to me. I'm going to go adoption. I'm going to go egg donor. I'm going to go sperm donor. I'm going to go step parenting, right? If you say, I would rather be, that you ask a hard question. If I am never happy in my marriage, or I see my kids 50% of the time, which are those two extremes am I more comfortable with? Right. So you said, I'll see my kids, I'd rather.
Well, at first I stayed for, longer than I should have because I was not okay with seeing my kids 50% of the time. So I stayed longer than I should have. Right. But then I was like, no, I'm okay with that's a great way to look at things.
It's a great way to, and you know what? It's totally okay. If one of your girlfriends said to you, I'm miserable in my marriage, but I'm going to stick it out because I need to see my kids every day, that's okay. And if another friend says, I'm miserable in my marriage and it scares the hell out of me not to see my kids every day, but losing myself scares me more, that's okay. And what we need to do, your podcast and your work and my work, is celebrate all the choices. Whatever it is, yes, we support you.
That's right.
Yeah.
And stop judging and stop.
Totally.
And there shouldn't be any judgment. It's awesome. Okay. So wait, tell me something.
Yeah.
The family positivity movement.
Yeah. Is this.
This is
it.
All this. Right, I just wanted to give it to the name.
Yeah. So I like calling it the family positivity movement because I think there's this we're at this really interesting intersection of science and changing norms. And what I mean by that is we're starting to be more open-minded. We're starting to say, starting from the 2004 time period when gay marriage was legalized, we're starting to say, okay, family can look that way. It can look this way. It can look this way. It can look this way. And I look at the early 90s when Kate Moss was the example of what was beautiful. She was white. She was exceedingly skinny. She was blonde, she was tall. And that was what we were taught to believe was pretty. Nothing else counted. So if you had curly hair, if you had a curvy body, if you had different color skin, if you were shorter, not acceptable. And this is the same way that we've been taught a 2-family household with a man and a woman parenting and multiple children is the only acceptable. That's the Kate Moss. That's the ideal. But it's not. I mean, we've got curvy families. We've got tall families. We've got short families. We've got all sorts of families, and they're all gorgeous. And so the family positivity movement is very similar to the body positivity movement in that we are just trying to create a culture that normalizes and accepts all families.
I just love that. I just love you. I can't take it. Okay. So tell me do you mind sharing your story?
Yeah. So
a little bit. Do you mind?
Yeah. So we started talking when I was 35 about this this relationship. My God.
You look 35. People can't see you, but you look 35.
Oh my God.
You look so young. I'm like,
I turned 41 this weekend. So thank you.
Happy birthday. Happy birthday.
Thank you. It feels like a big crested into the actual 40s. And I'm encouraged to hear about your fertility later in life. I want to hear more about that later. Yeah. So I was 35. I was like, oh God, what am I going to do? Picked myself up after a very long and tough period of dealing with the breakup and started to go down the path of figuring out what I wanted. And the first thing I did is I started saying, okay, let me set some options.
Okay, y'all, we need to talk about the holidays and divorce. It's a stressful time for families, especially when alcohol is involved, and our friends at SoberLink want to help. SoberLink has teamed up with divorce and family law experts to provide information that offers peace of mind during the holidays. For those who still haven't heard about SoberLink, it is the solution if you are going through a divorce and custody case involving alcohol. Whether you are falsely accused of alcohol use or are concerned about your child's safety because of the other parent's alcohol use, SoberLink can help. SoberLink works to keep children safe And its technology makes it a gold standard in alcohol monitoring systems. Don't miss out on SoberLink's free guide for the upcoming holiday season. Request it today at www.soberlink.com/DRR. That's soberlink.com.
So I froze my eggs. Highly, highly recommend that for anyone.
Okay, can we talk about that for 1 minute?
Absolutely.
Do you mind? I have so many clients that are like, should I freeze my eggs? What do you think? And I always say yes. But when do you think is the right time? Is there
I can't answer that. That's a question for your doctor.
Okay.
I mean, the general rule of thumb is like in your mid-30s ideally, or before your mid-30s ideally. But if you're 27 and I want to invest in my career or I haven't yet found my person, go for it. If you're 39 and you think, I've missed my opportunity, talk to a doctor. It's possible that when they test your fertility levels, that it's not too late. The gating factor, I think, it's not necessarily your age, although of course younger is better. It's that it's freaking expensive. And
so expensive, right?
It's so expensive. And your insurance doesn't cover it. There are some big companies that are starting to cover it, like the Googles, et cetera, of the world. If you're lucky enough to work for one of those, take advantage of those benefits. But if you can't, and if you have a little money saved up, it is such an investment in your future, because then you can say, for me, it said, okay, I can date. And I don't have to date the way you did by saying, I'm dating for a sperm donor, right? You can say, do I like this person, actually like this person or not? And if it's a no, you move on. You're not thinking, am I just choosing them because I have this ticking time bomb in my head around my fertility?
I can't stand that.
God.
It's so hard. God.
And the second thing is, the way I thought about it is, if I meet my partner late in life and we're successful at having a baby, number one, and I'm in my late 30s, maybe my eggs would be a gift to this person for baby number 2. Right? Like it's an investment in our future together as a couple. Or maybe, we start trying and it's a little hard. I've already done the hard work financially to invest in our future together. And look, we've already got eggs that we can use if we need to. Yeah. So for baby number 1, you're not saying I'm going to use them for myself. You're saying maybe we do this together. Now, there is a caveat, which is it doesn't always work, right? They can dethaw them and nothing dethaws. They can inseminate them and nothing work, so you're spending a lot of money on a maybe, but it was a risk I was willing to take. And in fact, I wish I had done it a second round and had more eggs banked. Now that I'm 41 and I'm thinking okay, I might want the baby number 2. So that's how I thought about it. I thought it will give me time to date properly. It'll give me time to work on my career. It's a possible gift to a future partner, so that they don't have to experience a lot of expensive and painful infertility with me. If that happens for us.
Yeah, it's a lot of pressure and stress.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And in fact, I wish men were freezing their sperm, right? Because younger sperm is better. And then if we had your 25-year-old sperm and my 35-year-old eggs, come on, that'd be amazing.
Yep. You don't have to worry about a lot of things.
Right. So
lots of stress off.
I recommend it. If you can afford it, do it. Period. Then I dated a bunch. I really pushed myself to get out there. And while dating, spent a lot of time with self-reflection and self-knowledge, because when you know yourself, you date better.
I agree.
Right?
Yay. I love it.
So,
yes.
You can't just go out there willy-nilly. It's like, I don't want to use this analogy. I almost said it's like shooting a loaded gun, but it's such a bad analogy right now. It's just, you don't want to be out there unaware of who you are.
No,
you're just going to cause so much trauma on the people around you and on yourself. So a lot of self-reflection.
Say that again. When I say it, no one listens to me.
If you're sitting in front of somebody and they have no clue who they are and what they want from life,
God,
how
you're
much does
what
that
am
suck?
I doing here?
Yes.
What am I doing here? It's like be intentional.
Be with intentional. And then be honest. Here's what I've learned is you have to be so clear with yourself and so honest with yourself. And then you're giving your partner, if you're honest with your partner and with yourself, you're giving them the ability to you're treating them like an adult. Right? And you're saying,
thank you for this.
You can respond.
Hold on just a minute. Everybody who's listening, you don't listen to me, y'all. Okay. Maybe you'll listen to Julia today. I'm wondering, because this is honestly you're singing to the choir, girl.
So let me give you an example. So
I love
at about 37, I went on a spiritual trip to Peru. I know it was like one of the highlights of my life. Before having babies, before COVID, I traveled a lot. I said, if I'm not going to have kids, because I don't know what's going to happen for me, but if I'm not going to have kids, I'm going to take my disposable cash, whatever it is, and invest in experiences. Now, a financial planner might have said that I should invest in investing and saving, but I went to Peru. We're not going to discount that there's privilege in being able to do that. And on the mountains of Peru, we went to this place where National Geographic has never even been. It was like an invite only, once in a lifetime trip to stay with a community in the mountains of Peru. And I'm telling you, if I were to hear somebody say this, I'd say this isn't an actual thing. But we were up in the mountains and they were so tall, so high up there. You look down on the clouds. There are no trees because it's just so high up there. I could go on and on about this experience. And while there, we met with the Peruvian healers, the shamans. And I prayed on this mountain, with no trees, no fire, no nothing. I'm freezing my ass off. And I prayed and I prayed and I prayed. And I said, open my heart and open my womb. I want to meet somebody and I want to have a baby. I get home, open the apps, and I immediately meet somebody. Immediately. And it was just the craziest thing. Like I'm having like chills just remembering it. I opened the app, we started having this conversation, and I was like, this is the guy. But I kind of didn't want to believe it because I live in New England, I live in Boston, and this gentleman lived in California, divorced, 2 kids, and he was visiting for work. His work is in Boston. And this is pre-pandemic. So we met for a date, and I was like, this is a practice date, I told him. We're not going to date. I can't do long distance. This is a practice date. And we sit down and the date's going fine. I'm like, okay, this is fine. No big deal. And we go to end the date.
I have the chills.
We go to end the date and he's like, I'm going to walk you home. You're not walking me home. I can't know where I live. I don't know who you are. So we walk in the opposite direction of my home for safety purposes. And there's a bar along the way. I'm like, let's just have one more drink. By the end of that next drink, I was in love. This guy was amazing. And he is amazing. He's a remarkable human being. And on date 4, I said, you have to know I'm 37 and I'm going down a path to have a baby.
Okay, stop right now.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so you told him this and
100%.
you said, and you're like, I don't care if you're involved, but I want to let you know that I'm having a kid.
And
period.
it was a little more nuanced. I mean, it was very much like
you weren't just like me, just threw it out there. Okay.
You have to. I had to be honest. I had to say, I need kids. I want to be a mom so badly.
Good for you.
I'm happy to be a parent figure in your kids' lives, but I want a child that I full-time parent. And I was like, so are you on board? Do you want to have a kid with me? And I was like, it's like date 4, you don't have to answer this right now, but if we keep dating, you have to know that this is one of the things.
Can I stop you for 1 second? Yeah. I am all for it. I tell my clients, use your words, say what you want, be upfront, be honest, please. Save everybody your time.
100%.
Excellent.
Because what I did was I gave him the option of saying, okay, I know your truth. Now I need to figure out my truth. And guess what his truth was? His truth was, I want to keep dating you. I think there's something special here. I do not want more biological kids. He said, I do not want more biological kids, but I'm on board with you continuing down the solo parent by choice journey. And if we end up together, I'm on board parenting your child.
Okay. Were you like, are you kidding me?
I was like, this is a dream come true.
Yeah, honestly.
Right.
Were you like, I cannot believe this is happening?
100%. And had we not had that conversation, had I kept it in the back of my head, had I not put my truth on the table, he might not have put his truth on the table, right? I might have been waiting for him to have a baby with me when in fact, he never wanted to have a kid with me.
Yeah, and you would have just kept dating and you would have been devastated.
I would have been devastated.
Because you would have put in your time and energy. Oh
totally.
My gosh, right.
And so every month I would say, okay, I'm meeting with the fertility doctor. This is what the fertility doctor said. And every month I'd say, are you sure you don't want to participate? Nope, don't want to participate. I mean, we're talking too much information, but boxes of condoms. We are not going to make a mistake here. This is not happening for me. Right. Now, also, we're long distance. He lives in California. I live in Boston. And
so does my boyfriend.
Right? And the pandemic hit.
Funny?
It's so wait, you're in California.
I'm in Charlotte.
You're in Charlotte.
Okay. And he's in California. He's in LA.
Okay, here's a little secret. I actually think early on long distance relationships are the best.
Okay, I'm telling you, we could talk for hours.
We could talk for hours. But here's why, and then we'll go back to this. The reason is early on in a long distance relationship, you don't get clouded by the sex because you don't get to see that person very often. You have to get on the phone and you have to disclose your heart and be show up and say, this is who I am. And so you get to meet somebody truly and deeply faster.
Yes.
And then later it's a clusterfuck, pardon me. It's a disaster. And
it's a disaster.
Yeah, it's a disaster.
And then it gets better. If you can get through that mess of a disaster, it gets better.
Okay, you need to tell me how later.
Yeah, I will. I will.
So anyway, I went through the whole fertility journey, and here's where the importance between single parent and solo parent language comes in.
Okay, yes. Please explain this.
Some people, I'm a solo parent, meaning I am 100% parenting my child solo, which is different from my status at the time of dating him. Right? Because I wasn't single. I was in a relationship, but he was not the dad. He was not the parent. He barely saw my kid. Many people are solo parents in marriages, meaning they are married and the person that they're married to has absolutely nothing to do with the child rearing or the household maintenance. And they're miserable because they're doing all the stuff. I'm working full time. I'm taking care of my kid full time. And you are barely showing up in my life. Single parents are, oftentimes people who are divorced and they're single in their parenting, but they might have a co-parent. They're not the only parent, right?
Right.
And
so I don't even call those people single parents.
A lot of divorced people do, and I never know how I feel about that.
Yeah, you know what? I don't, because I actually had someone on my podcast who is a single, legitimately single mom, a divorced mom, but she's single. The dad has no...
Right. And that's different. That's different.
Not in the picture. But I'm a divorced mom, but I don't consider myself single because I have an ex-husband, my husband, who we co-parent. So I can't call myself single because I have a co-parent.
Or solo, yeah. It's all very sticky and confusing, and I don't know which term works, but for me, I was solo parenting. I'm the full-time parent.
Yes, 100%.
And I was sort of in this relationship, long distance, which totally fell apart in the pandemic. I mean, it was so bad. We had things like I couldn't visit him because his kids schools had rules that if somebody came out of state, they had to quarantine for 2 weeks. I mean, it was a whole nightmare.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah.
And so there was an 8-month period of time where I got pregnant and I didn't see him, and it was such a mess. Finally saw him 5 months pregnant by flying out to California, 5 months pregnant when there was no vaccine, and it was super unsafe, and quarantining myself and spending some time out in California with him, and he wouldn't introduce me to his kids. So there's more there. We won't get into it too much, but the relationship really fell apart, even though I'm so proud of the way we both handled our honest truth early on. My honest truth was I wanted kids, and I was happy to do it with him, or I was happy to do it alone. And his honest truth was he didn't want to have biological kids. Later on, the pandemic just sort of disintegrated the fabric of our relationship. And we recently broke up when he, after 3 years, finally said, wait a minute, I have a new honest truth. And that is, when I spend time with your child, the few times he saw him a year, I feel so much guilt that I'm not with my own kids, that it is too much for me. So he was imagining a life where we would end up moving in together, and he would be full-time with my kid because my kid doesn't have another house to go to, and he would not be full-time with his own kids, and it was too hard. There were obviously other things at work there, but that was a new honest truth that emerged for him. And then a second honest truth that emerged for him is he didn't want any more. His 2 kids may be mine. That's it. And I would love to have more kids. So that's it. But the long distance thing was a disaster.
It's hard.
Yeah.
It's so hard.
So hard.
It's just really, really difficult.
Yeah. But imagine if he wasn't honest with me. And in fact, I'm a little angry that I think he withheld that information. I think he knew it subconsciously and didn't share it. He wasn't honest with himself first. But imagine if he had gone years without saying, I actually really don't want to be in your kid's life full time.
It happens all the time.
All the time. So that's where the honesty thing is so critical in dating.
So critical, but I don't think it happens very often.
Yeah. And
I'm going to be honest. Yeah. I'm going to be honest. I don't think, that's the problem.
And you know what? My story, it sounds unusual. And there are elements of it that are unusual in that I met somebody and he stayed with me while I did the solo parenting thing, and that we were doing long distance. However, if you go on the Facebook groups, and if anyone is thinking about becoming a solo parent by choice, there are these incredible Facebook groups. And there's a Facebook group for solo parents by choice. There's a Facebook usually by geography, solo parents by choice in this geography. There's a Facebook group for people in different levels of fertility treatments, like solo parents going through IVF. And then there's a solo parents dating. And it is so common that, it's almost like a universal sign where you say to the world, I'm ready. You start to go through the solo parent journey, and then you meet somebody. It is so common.
Come on, really? Okay, this is amazing to me because I'm so not in that.
Yeah,
and I'm old lady. So this is
it's it comes up all the time. Almost once a week, somebody posts, okay, I've just met somebody. Do I delay my fertility treatments and explore the relationship, or do I continue going and see, like I did, continue going and see if the person wants to stick with me? And for each person, again, the answer, just as we were talking about previously, the answer is different. If you know in your gut that your strong preference is to parent with a partner, and you meet somebody just about to do fertility treatments, then do another round of egg freezing. Make embryos with donor sperm or something while you pursue the relationship and see if that goes anywhere. Or have an honest conversation with them and see if they want to be on board. Or maybe they say, you know what, I'll have the baby with you. And if the relationship doesn't work, then we co-parent. There's so many different options.
They can listen to your podcast too. Do you do coaching for this?
Not yet.
Think about doing that?
Not yet.
I mean, you should. I'm just going to get everyone that comes to my podcast leaves with like a different job. They have a new career. You should coach this. You should be a coach for this.
Interesting. There's a lot here. There's a lot here.
I could never do this without you.
Yeah. And you know what? I have to tell you, there are some people who genuinely, truly want a partner in life, and it's all they've ever imagined for themselves.
Okay.
It's how they show up in relationship to others. Like some of us do very well on our own, very independent, where we enjoy our solitude. We enjoy being alone. Even when you have the best community in the whole wide world, and I have the best community. I have a community of solo moms. I have a community of friends who come over and babysit on occasion if I need to. I have, you name it, I have the best support imaginable. And there are times when I'm still alone, and it's fine. I'm okay being alone.
It's funny. I dated a guy. It's not really funny. I dated a guy for a long time after my divorce, before my boyfriend, and he lived in DC. And he always said, I'm good. I don't want kids. He was older. I don't want kids. I don't want kids. I'm totally fine, blah, blah, blah. And then in probably a year into a relationship, he was like, I want kids. And I was like, oh, but you have two. There they are, Jonah and Zach. One's, they were old. They were in high school. And I was like, what do you mean? And he's like, listen, and I'm like, but you said you didn't want them. Like all of a sudden you want them? And he's like, I want my own children.
Yeah. And something interesting that came up for me in this relationship is the more I fell in love with my partner, even though I wanted to be a solo mom by choice, I was excited to be a solo mom by choice. I had the sperm donor. I loved the sperm donor, picked really well because my kid is remarkable. There was a little part of me that as I fell in love with him, I would say, I really would love to parent a baby you, right? I love you so much, to have your body. So I understand that there's something so special about being with somebody and saying, I get to have this mini version of you. That's great.
Well, you know what he said to me? He said, I just thought you'd change your mind.
Oh, interesting.
He said, I thought, because we met a match and it was like, it was no kids, whatever. And I'm like, change my mind. I'm like, I'm 42. I'm like, I'm not, at this point, my babies are old. They're in, and I said, change my mind. And he's like, I figured we'd love each other enough for you. and I'm like, I wasn't going to change my mind. My truth was I didn't want any more children. And his truth was, I do want kids with you. But then we broke up. And
so how do you coach through that? Because I've seen so many couples where they do change their mind. Where somebody says, I never want kids, and then they do change their mind. Or they say, I didn't think I wanted more, and they do change their mind. And we should be allowed to change our minds.
You're allowed to change your mind. You know what? People change their mind all the time.
But
and you're allowed to.
At the same time as people change their mind, you can't bank on somebody changing their mind.
That's the problem with life. I think it's that it's just so up and down. You just never know, and you can't. And people do change their minds all the time.
Amazing.
So you want to trust and believe that what they're saying is, but at the moment, and then all of a sudden, it's just really, relationships are tough.
Oh God, which is why you're here, right?
Yeah.
This is why.
Me too.
Relationships are so hard. Oh my God.
They are so hard.
And I'll tell you, one of my girlfriends just yesterday, she's another solo mom by choice, sent me an article about a woman in Seattle who was a single mom to an adult child who had special needs. And she met somebody and she said, let's go to the Seattle Mariners. And they went to a public place for their first date. And a week later, she ended up dead. He kidnapped her and strangled her. Here's the thing that's really scary is, and I never thought about this when I was going through my journey, is I thought there's an argument to be made that it's easier to date once you already have your kids, because you take the pressure off of an additional partner around this biological clock. You take the pressure off of we need to have more kids. And there's a whole host of other divorced people or other single people with kids that open up to you when you start meeting them on the playgrounds and in schools and stuff like that. So I thought, oh, no problem. Maybe I'll meet somebody after I have this kid if my relationship doesn't work, which it didn't. What I didn't appreciate is when you're a solo parent, you have to be extra risk averse, because if anything happens to you, there's no other parent, right?
Yeah, your baby has no parent. Yeah.
So things like,
gosh, Julia,
where you travel and how you date have to be different. The other thing I've heard, and this is really scary to me, is that there are horrible people who will go on social media and on dating apps, and they look to see if you have kids, and they date you to get to your kids. These are like pedophiles.
Okay. Yeah, you told me this before we got in there, and I was like, that is nauseating to me.
Nauseating. And these two stories make me afraid to frankly put myself out there. I'm not ready. My heart is not ready. But when it is
when
ready.
you're ready, you'll call me and we'll do a little something. I'll get you, because there are ways to really protect yourself. And I've got to be honest, I'm all about a background check.
Yes.
I do background checks. I am fully 100%. It takes nothing and it's worth it. So, I mean.
Okay. So background checks. Yeah. So when you're solo parenting, you just have to think about like dating's going to be a little different. Things like you can't have overnights unless somebody's staying with your kid. Right?
But you know what? I don't really tell, I think overnights are, you got to wait anyways. So I'm okay with it. I made some real big mistakes, Julia. Really big ones. When I got divorced, I was it was a mess. But you learn from your mistakes and then you start coaching people and say, listen, don't do this because I fucked it all up.
I think that it's important after a big relationship to put yourself out there in situations where you know it's not long term. Like it may not even last more than 12 hours.
Those are some of my favorites.
Get it out of your system. Yeah.
That's right. Okay, Julia, I love you. I have to let you go, but let me ask you a question. First of all, where can everybody find you? You're Stork'd. Is it Stork'd or the Stork'd?
So Stork'd, and it's STORK'D. So the apostrophe is how you find me. Anywhere you listen to podcasts. We have a website which has free resources and downloadable tools and, discount codes, all that good stuff. And there's a newsletter. So please sign up for the newsletter.
I did. I signed up for your newsletter.
Awesome.
I'm so excited. Yay. We're going to keep connected because I think you're awesome. I think this is amazing. I'm so glad you were here and thank you for sharing everything with us. And my listeners are going to be, I think it's just, I really did think there was like a huge stigma. Like I felt like people, but I'm old. So I'm glad that there's not.
There always will be a stigma. There will always,
I hate that.
There's always going to be people who don't understand whatever life choice you make.
I know,
but
don't you hate
the
that?
majority of people are open-minded and you can't not make life choices because some person that you're going to run into on the street is going to say something nasty. Who gives a shit? Sorry.
I don't give a shit. I'm done.
For instance, on my social media, I was very active about the fact that I had a problem with the passport agency when I was trying to get a passport for my son because I don't have another person on his.
You need two people, right?
Right. My birth certificate just has me, and that should be sufficient. But some of our government officials aren't educated on all the different family structures, and one of them gave me a hard time, even though it's completely within the rules. Who cares? I'm never going to meet this person again. I got angry. I frustrated with her, but whatever. So if that's your reason for not going the solo parenting route, don't do that. Don't let that hold you back, but don't assume it's for everyone. In the same way that divorce isn't for everyone, marriage isn't for everyone, kids aren't for everyone. Everyone has to find their own path.
People can find you. I think you really should be coaching. I think if you have can people reach out to you if they have questions?
Of course. I'm very responsive. Yeah.
And there you go. And now you start charging for it. Okay, perfect. There you go, Julia.
Amazing.
I adore you, honey. Have a great day. Everybody do me a favor. Do something fabulous for yourself today. And you know where to find me, jenniferhurwitz.com or Doing Relationships Right or something like that. I don't know. Oh my gosh, this has been great. Everybody, thanks for being here. Thanks for listening. This is Doing Relationships Right. Peace, love, and so much truth. Bye, y'all. Hey, thanks for listening to Doing Relationships Right. Don't forget, if you enjoyed the show, subscribe, rate, and review wherever you get your podcast episodes. And please grab my books, One Happy Divorce and Woulda, Coulda, Shoulda on my website, jenniferhurwitz.com. And look out for my new book, all about doing dating right, coming soon. As usual, thanks for listening. See you next week. Peace, love, and truth.